And my daughter whispered, "Stop acting like a teen influencer." Then a publisher called me the future of senior media. "Mom, please stop. You're embarrassing yourself and us." My daughter Melissa leaned across the dinner table, her voice a harsh whisper that everyone still heard. "You're 63, not 16. This whole influencer thing needs to end before you completely ruin our family's reputation." The table fell silent. My son-in-law James studied his plate with sudden interest. My teenage grandchildren, who had been showing me a TikTok dance minutes earlier, froze mid-laugh, their faces shifting from joy to discomfort. Even the restaurant's ambient chatter seemed to dim. I'd worn my favorite emerald blouse, the one my followers always complimented in comments. My silver hair was freshly styled into what my stylist called an elegant but youthful bob. I'd been excited to share my news. My lifestyle channel had just crossed 50,000 subscribers, and a skincare brand for mature women wanted to sponsor my next video. Instead, I sat there, food cooling on my plate, as my own daughter publicly shamed me. I could feel the heat rising to my face, not from embarrassment as she intended, but from a slow-burning anger that had been building for months. What Melissa didn't know was that while she was dismissing my little hobby at our family dinner, 3 unread emails waited in my inbox. One from a major publishing house, one from a talent agency, and one containing a contract worth more money than I'd made in the last 5 years of my teaching career. That dinner was 6 months ago. What happened next changed everything. For me, for my family, and for thousands of women like me who refused to become invisible after 60. My name is Eleanor Mitchell, and this is how I went from being the family embarrassment to what Forbes recently called the most influential voice in senior digital media today. It wasn't supposed to be this way. 3 years ago, I was just Eleanor, retired high school English teacher, widow of 40 years, grandmother of 3, and, according to my daughter, increasingly set in my ways. Melissa had been trying to get me to move to a senior living community since Thomas died. "It would be better for you, Mom," she'd say. "You'd have friends your own age, activities, structure." What she meant was, it would be better for her. No more worrying about her aging mother alone in a too-big house. No more weekly obligation visits. No more uncomfortable explanations to her country club friends about why her mother insisted on living in the past. The irony is, it was Melissa who gave me my first iPhone, mostly so she could check on me without calling. And it was my 14-year-old granddaughter Zoe who showed me how to use Instagram during one of her reluctant weekend visits. "Grandma, you can't just post blurry pictures of your garden," Zoe had sighed, taking my phone. "Here, let me show you filters. And hashtags. You need hashtags." I remember watching her fingers fly across my screen with practiced ease, adding little pound signs followed by words like "Aj gardening" and "Hein retired life." She showed me how to follow accounts, like posts, and leave comments. "Just don't try to be cool," she warned, with the brutal honesty only teenagers possess. "Old people trying to be cool are so cringe." I nodded solemnly, not entirely sure what cringe meant, but understanding the sentiment. "I promised to act my age," I told her. That might have been the end of it. Just another widow with a social media account posting pictures of her roses and book club selections. Except 2 things happened that changed everything. First, Thomas's life insurance policy, the one I'd been counting on to supplement my teacher's pension, turned out to be worth half what we'd expected due to a clause neither of us had understood. Second, the basement flooded after spring rains, ruining most of the boxes containing 40 years of teaching materials I'd planned to organize during retirement. As I stood ankle-deep in water, watching my carefully preserved lesson plans and student projects dissolve, something inside me broke. And then, strangely, something else opened up. I called a restoration company, filed an insurance claim, and then, without quite understanding why, I set up my phone on the kitchen counter and hit record. "Hello," I said to no one. "My name is Eleanor. I'm 60 years old, and today I lost 40 years of my career to 6 inches of water. So I'm going to have a glass of wine at 10 in the morning and figure out what the hell to do with the rest of my life." I posted it without filters or hashtags. Then I went to bed and cried until my throat hurt. The next morning, I had 147 views, and 23 comments, most from strangers. People my age saying they understood, younger people saying I reminded them of their mothers or grandmothers. Someone suggested I start a series called Eleanor's Second Act, and so I did. Every day, I recorded myself doing one new thing I'd never done before: baking a complicated French pastry, trying on clothes I would have considered too young before, reading poetry aloud, first other people's, then terrifyingly, my own. I learned how to edit videos from YouTube tutorials. I figured out lighting by trial and error. Within 3 months, I had 5,000 followers. Within 6 months, 15,000. People seemed to connect with my honesty, my willingness to fail on camera, my refusal to pretend aging wasn't happening while simultaneously refusing to be limited by it. The first brand deal came shortly after that. A small skincare company specializing in products for mature skin. They sent me $300 worth of creams and serums in exchange for an honest review. When they saw the engagement on my post, hundreds of comments, thousands of likes, they offered me $500 for another. I didn't tell Melissa about any of this. Somehow, I knew she wouldn't understand. Our relationship had grown increasingly strained since Thomas died. She'd always been closer to her father, and without him to mediate, the fundamental differences in our personalities had room to expand into chasms. Melissa was orderly, practical, concerned with appearances. She had followed the traditional path: college, marriage, children, suburban house with a 2-car garage. Her husband made good money in corporate finance. She volunteered at charity events and served on the PTA. Her life was a blueprint of upper-middle-class propriety. I had once been a bit of a rebel, protesting in the 70s, teaching controversial literature despite parent complaints, taking my students to poetry slams and art installations. Somewhere along the way, I'd tamped that part of myself down, becoming the supportive wife and mother society expected. Thomas had loved that original spark in me, had encouraged it even as parenthood and career pulled me toward convention. After his death, I realized how much of myself I'd set aside. My social media presence became a way to reclaim those neglected parts: the curiosity, the willingness to take risks, the desire to create and connect. The first time Melissa discovered my account was purely by accident. Zoe had left a comment on one of my videos, a simple heart emoji, and it appeared in Melissa's feed. "Mom," she called that evening, her voice tight with controlled panic. "Why does Zoe's Instagram show a video of you dancing in the living room?" It wasn't actually dancing. It was gentle yoga for seniors. But I didn't correct her. "Oh, I've been posting videos for a while now," I said casually. "Zoe helped me set up my account last summer." "You have a public account?" The horror in her voice might have been comical if it hadn't stung so badly. "Yes, I do. Quite a few people follow it, actually." "Who follows it?" "People interested in seeing a woman my age try new things. It's been quite therapeutic after losing your father." There was a long silence. "Have you considered grief counseling instead?" she finally asked. "Something more private?" That was the beginning of Melissa's campaign to end what she called my bizarre midlife crisis. Never mind that at 60, I was well beyond midlife. The comments started small, little digs about appropriate behavior, questions about whether I'd considered how this phase might affect my grandchildren. I tried to share my excitement when I reached milestones: 10,000 followers, my first sponsorship that paid actual money, being featured on a list of silver influencers to watch. But each announcement was met with thinly veiled disapproval. "Isn't it exhausting, keeping up with all that young people stuff?" she'd ask. Or, "Don't those companies just want to exploit older women's insecurities?" Or my personal favorite: "I saw an article about internet predators targeting seniors. You're being careful, right?" I stopped telling her about my growing success. I created a separate savings account for my earnings, which were becoming substantial enough to not just supplement my pension, but potentially replace it. I started working with a tax professional who specialized in influencer income. I signed with a small talent management agency that focused on non-traditional digital creators. But families have a way of finding out things you'd rather keep private, especially when you're building a public presence. Which brings me back to that disastrous dinner 6 months ago. Melissa had organized it, supposedly to celebrate my birthday, though my actual birthday was 3 weeks away. I should have been suspicious when she insisted we meet at Bellini's, an expensive Italian restaurant where her husband's firm often entertained clients. Melissa was making a statement. We are normal, respectable people who celebrate occasions appropriately. What I didn't know was that she had seen my latest video, one where I candidly discussed dating after 60, including a humorous segment on navigating dating apps. It had gone viral, with over 1 million views. Several media outlets had picked it up, including a local news station that had requested an interview. "So," Melissa said, after we'd ordered appetizers, "Jason's parents saw an interesting segment on Channel 5 yesterday. The table temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Oh?" I kept my voice neutral while my stomach tightened. "Yes. Imagine their surprise when they called to tell us they saw Mom on the evening news, talking about her experiences with Tinder. James, my son-in-law, suddenly became very interested in the breadbasket. My grandson Tyler, 16 and mortified by everything, slunk down in his seat. Only Zoe met my eyes, a mixture of concern and something like admiration in her expression. "It wasn't just about Tinder," I said. "It was about the challenges of connecting at my age, in a digital world designed for young people. You talked about sexting, Mom." Melissa's voice was low but intense. "On television. I talked about the pressure some people feel to engage in it, and how to establish boundaries," I corrected. "It was educational. It was inappropriate. According to whom? According to common decency." Melissa's voice rose slightly, causing heads to turn at nearby tables. She immediately lowered it again. "Mom, you're a grandmother, a retired teacher. People from church watch those news programs, and they might learn something useful," I replied, trying to keep my own voice steady, about respecting themselves, about not settling, about the fact that life and love don't end at 60. That's when she said it, leaning across the table, eyes darting to make sure the neighboring diners weren't listening. "Mom, please stop. You're embarrassing yourself, and us. You're 63, not 16. This whole influencer thing needs to end before you completely ruin our family's reputation." The words hit like physical blows, not because I cared about their reputation in some abstract sense, but because in that moment, I realized my own daughter saw me as nothing more than an extension of herself, an aging appendage that had become inconvenient and embarrassing, rather than a whole person with my own identity and purpose. "I see," was all I said. The rest of the dinner passed in excruciating politeness. We discussed the grandchildren's school activities, James's recent promotion, the neighbors' landscaping choices, all the safe topics that fill the space when real communication has become too dangerous. Driving home alone, I finally allowed myself to cry. Not delicate tears, but ugly, gulping sobs that fogged my glasses and made me pull over twice to collect myself. By the time I reached my driveway, however, something had shifted. The grief remained, but alongside it grew a steely resolve. Back home, I finally opened those 3 emails I'd been saving. The first was from Horizon Publishing, one of the largest media companies in the country. "We've been following your content with great interest and believe your voice represents an untapped market in digital publishing. We'd like to discuss the possibility of a book project focused on your journey and perspective." The second, from Sterling Talent Agency. "Your authentic approach to content creation has captured attention across multiple demographics. We believe you have potential beyond your current platforms and would like to discuss representation." The third, from Luminous Skincare, a nationally recognized brand. "Our market research shows your audience not only engages with your content, but trusts your recommendations at rates well above industry averages. We'd like to offer you a 6-month exclusivity contract." The amount they offered was more than I'd made in my last year of teaching. I forwarded all 3 emails to my current manager with a simple message: "Let's talk tomorrow." Then I did something I'd never done before. I set up my camera, turned on the ring light I'd invested in with my first sponsorship money, and started recording without a script or plan. "Today," I said to the camera, my voice still rough from crying, "my own daughter told me to stop embarrassing the family by acting like a teenager instead of a proper 63-year-old grandmother." I held up my phone, and today, I received 3 emails that could change my life, because I refused to become invisible when society expected me to. I showed the emails, names visible but dollar amounts blurred. This isn't about revenge or proving people wrong. It's about proving something to myself, that I don't need anyone's permission to redefine what this stage of life can be. So here's what I'm going to do. I laid out my plan right there, in real time. I would accept the publishing deal. I would consider the new representation. I would negotiate the skincare contract to ensure it aligned with my values, and I would document every step of this journey, the successes, the failures, the learning curves, and yes, the family tensions. Because I'm not the only woman being told to shrink herself, to be less, to conform to outdated expectations of aging gracefully, which too often means aging invisibly, I concluded. So if you're out there feeling the same pressure to disappear, know that you're not alone, and you don't have to comply. I posted the video without editing. Then I turned off my phone, took a long bath, and slept better than I had in months. The video hit 3 million views by morning. My follower count jumped by 75,000 in 24 hours. The comments section became a tsunami of stories from women and men who had experienced similar dismissal from family, friends, or society at large. My son told me my makeup was too much for a grandmother. My friends stopped inviting me to girls' night when I turned 60. My daughter suggests age-appropriate clothes every Christmas. My family acts like my dating life is either a joke or a crisis. What surprised me most were the messages from younger viewers. I wish my mom had your confidence. This helped me understand my grandmother better. You're changing how I think about aging. Melissa called around noon, her voice tight with controlled fury. Mom, what have you done? James's boss saw your video. His parents are asking questions. The neighbors are talking. Good morning to you too, Melissa. This isn't funny. You aired our private conversation to millions of strangers. I shared my experience of being humiliated by my own daughter in a public place. I corrected. I didn't use your name. I didn't show your face. I talked about how it made me feel and what I plan to do next. You should take it down immediately. No, I don't think I will. The silence that followed was so long I wondered if she'd hung up. Mom, she finally said, her voice different now, smaller, almost pleading. I don't understand why you're doing this to us. I'm not doing anything to you, Melissa. I'm doing something for myself. By exposing our family business? By acting like some kind of celebrity? By refusing to be dismissed? By creating something meaningful in this stage of my life? By connecting with people who understand what that's like? Another long pause. This isn't you, Mom, she said finally. Dad would be so disappointed. That was a low blow, using Thomas against me. For a moment, I couldn't speak past the knot in my throat. Your father, I said when I found my voice, always encouraged me to be fully myself. He would have been my biggest supporter. He would have wanted you to have dignity, she countered. Dignity doesn't mean invisibility, I said. I have to go. I have a call with a publisher in 30 minutes. I hung up before she could respond. The next weeks passed in a blur of negotiations, contracts, and planning sessions. I signed with Sterling Agency, keeping my original manager as part of my team. I accepted Horizon's book offer with specific terms about creative control. I negotiated the Luminous contract to include approval over all marketing materials and messaging. My content evolved as my platform grew. I still did my Try New Things videos, but I added series on financial literacy for women over 50, interviews with experts on topics from health to housing, and collaborations with other creators across age groups. I was careful to maintain authenticity, declining partnerships that didn't align with my values, being transparent about sponsored content, acknowledging my mistakes and learning curves. The book project took shape, part memoir, part cultural commentary on aging in the digital age. The working title, Invisible No More, Reclaiming Voice and Visibility After 60. Through it all, the rift with Melissa widened. She declined my calls. She restricted my access to my grandchildren, though Zoe, tech-savvy and rebellious, found ways to stay in touch through social media and text. My son-in-law James sent an awkward email expressing concerns about family privacy that read like it had been dictated by my daughter. I tried not to let it consume me, but the pain was constant. A background ache that flared during holidays, birthdays, and random Tuesday afternoons when I'd see something that reminded me of her. I kept a private journal of letters I wrote but never sent, working through my grief and anger with a therapist who specialized in family estrangement. 3 months into my new chapter, Luminous asked me to appear at their product launch event in New York. They were unveiling a new line specifically formulated for women over 50, with my input on the messaging and positioning. The campaign tagline, Beauty Doesn't Expire. The event was being held at an upscale hotel in Manhattan, with beauty editors, influencers, and industry executives invited. My team had arranged everything, Flights, accommodation, a professional stylist, talking points for the short speech I was expected to give. I hadn't been to New York since a school trip I'd chaperoned 15 years earlier. I hadn't traveled anywhere alone since Thomas died. But I found myself excited, rather than anxious, energized by the opportunity to represent women like me in a space that had traditionally excluded us. The night of the event, dressed in a midnight blue pantsuit that made me feel both elegant and powerful, I stood at the podium and looked out at a sea of faces, most younger, but a gratifying number showing the lines and character of decades lived. For most of my life, I began, I believed the narrative that women past a certain age should gracefully retreat from visibility, that our value diminished with each passing year, each new wrinkle, each gray hair. I internalized the message that beauty, relevance, and voice belonged to the young. I paused, making eye contact with several women nodding in recognition. Then life forced a reckoning. Widowhood, financial uncertainty, family tensions. And in that upheaval, I found something unexpected. Freedom. Freedom from expectations. Freedom from constraints I'd accepted without question. Freedom to redefine what this chapter could be. I gestured to the luminous products displayed on pedestals around the room. This isn't just about skincare. It's about the revolutionary act of caring for ourselves when society suggests we're past our prime. It's about refusing to disappear. It's about claiming space in conversations where our perspectives are essential, but often absent. The applause that followed was thunderous. Later, as I mingled with guests, a woman approached, elegant, probably in her 70s, with a distinguished air that suggested considerable influence. Eleanor Mitchell, she extended her hand. Catherine Westbrook, editor-in-chief at Athena Media. I recognized the name immediately. Athena was a growing media conglomerate focused on women's voices across generations. Your speech was remarkable, she continued. Authentic without being sentimental. Powerful without being bitter. We need more of that perspective in mainstream media. She handed me a business card. I'd like to talk about possibilities. My office will be in touch. I thanked her, tucking the card into my clutch, trying to maintain professional composure while internally marveling at this latest unexpected door opening. As the event wound down, my phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. OMG, Grandma, you're trending. Beauty doesn't expire. Back in my hotel room, I discovered my speech had been recorded, and clips were circulating on multiple platforms. Beauty influencers, most decades younger than me, were sharing it with passionate endorsements. Women my age and older were commenting by the thousands, many with tearful gratitude for the representation. And there, amid the notifications, was an email from Melissa. My hand shook slightly as I opened it. Mom, it began without greeting. Tyler showed me your speech tonight. He found it through one of his friends whose mother follows you. He seemed proud, which surprised me. No apology, no warmth, but not an attack either. I still don't understand why you've chosen this path. It's so public, so exposed, but I'm trying to accept that it's your choice to make. James thinks I've been too harsh. Maybe he's right. I held my breath as I read the final lines. Zoe misses you. We all do, if I'm being honest. Perhaps we could have lunch when you're back. Just us. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't even an admission of wrongdoing, but it was an opening, a small crack in the wall between us. I replied simply, I'd like that. I miss you too. 2 days later, I met with Catherine Westbrook and her team at the Athena Media offices. What I expected to be an exploratory conversation turned into a concrete offer. A weekly column on their digital platform, potential for a podcast, and a role as senior living editor, focusing on content for and about women over 50. We've been looking for someone who can speak authentically to this demographic without condescension or cliches, Catherine explained. Someone who understands digital spaces but brings life experience and wisdom. Your emergence couldn't be more timely. The offer they presented made my previous contracts look modest by comparison. But more valuable than the money was the platform. A chance to elevate not just my voice, but the voices of women like me who had been relegated to the margins. We don't want to position you as an exception or novelty, Catherine continued. We want you to help lead a movement, challenging assumptions about aging, ability, relevance, and contribution. I signed the preliminary agreement that day, with details to be finalized by our respective legal teams. Walking out of the Athena building onto Madison Avenue, I felt a momentary disorientation. Was this really happening? Was this really me? Had my life truly transformed so dramatically in less than a year? I took a cab to Central Park, found a bench in a quiet area, and called my sister Karen, the one family member who had supported my journey from the beginning. They want me to be the future of senior media, I told her, still processing. Me, who couldn't figure out Instagram filters a year ago. Karen laughed. Of course they do. You're the perfect person. You're authentic, you're articulate, and you don't pander to either age group. Young people don't feel lectured, and older people don't feel patronized. Melissa texted, I said, changing the subject to what was really on my mind. She wants to meet when I get back. Progress, Karen said cautiously. What are you hoping for? I considered the question carefully. Understanding, eventually. Respect would be nice, but I'll settle for civil communication as a starting point. Just remember, Karen advised, you don't need her approval anymore. That's your superpower now. She was right. Something fundamental had shifted, not just in my circumstances, but in my sense of self. I no longer needed validation from my daughter or anyone else to know my worth. When I returned home, the lunch with Melissa was predictably awkward. We met at a neutral location, a cafe halfway between our homes that neither of us frequented regularly. She looked tired, I noticed immediately. The perfect composure she usually maintained showed small cracks, a missed button on her cardigan, a smudge on her normally immaculate glasses. You look well, she said after we ordered. New York agreed with you. It was invigorating, I admitted. Challenging too. She nodded, fidgeting with her napkin. I saw you on the morning show yesterday. That was unexpected. The morning show appearance had been arranged by Sterling, a 5-minute segment about changing perceptions of aging in the digital era. I'd been nervous but prepared, and the interview had gone better than I'd anticipated. It was a good opportunity to expand the conversation, I said. Melissa took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Is this really making you happy? All this exposure? Or is it about proving something? The question caught me off guard, not because it was hostile, but because it seemed genuinely curious. Both, I answered truthfully. It makes me happy to use my voice, to connect with people, to learn new skills. And yes, it matters to me to challenge expectations, my own as much as anyone else's. But the privacy issues, the public scrutiny, I choose what to share, I interrupted gently. I'm more careful than you might think, and the communities I've found, the stories people share with me, they matter, Melissa. They matter a lot. She was silent for a long moment. James's mother follows you now, she said finally, with a hint of her old exasperation. She joined Instagram specifically to follow your account. She quotes you at family dinners. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Is that what this lunch is really about? Your mother-in-law is a fan? A reluctant smile tugged at her mouth. She asked me to get your autograph on her copy of Modern Aging magazine. It's humiliating. I'll do better than that. I'll invite her to the book launch. Melissa groaned, but there was less tension in her shoulders now. The kids miss you, she said, changing tactics. Especially Zoe. She's been insufferable since you became famous. I keeps telling her friends her grandmother is an influencer. I miss them too, I said simply. She studied her coffee cup. Tyler has a soccer tournament next weekend. If you're not too busy with your media empire, the olive branch was small, but significant. I'd love to come. Just, maybe don't film it for your channel? Some things could still be private, right? Of course, I agreed easily. Family time is off limits. We didn't resolve everything in that lunch. Decades of mother-daughter dynamics don't unravel in a single conversation. But we established a tentative truce, an acknowledgement that our relationship needed to evolve into something new, something based on mutual respect, rather than traditional hierarchies of parent and child. The next 6 months brought changes I could never have imagined. The book was published to critical acclaim and strong sales. The Athena Media partnership expanded to include a weekly live stream called Reinvention, where I interviewed women who had transformed their lives after 50. Luminous renewed our contract at twice the original rate. Most importantly, I found purpose beyond personal success. I established a foundation focused on digital literacy for seniors, partnered with several organizations dedicated to economic security for older women, and began mentoring other late-blooming content creators. My relationship with Melissa remained complex, with steps forward and back. She struggled to reconcile the mother she thought she knew with the public figure I'd become. But she was trying, sending me articles related to my work, occasionally offering reluctant compliments on content she'd seen, gradually allowing me back into family gatherings. The real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Zoe, my tech-savvy granddaughter, had been working on a school project about changing career paths. Without telling me, she interviewed me, compiled data on senior entrepreneurship, and created a presentation titled "The Rise of the Silver Influencer: How Digital Platforms Are Redefining Aging." She invited both me and Melissa to her presentation. Sitting side by side in uncomfortable classroom chairs, we watched as Zoe confidently outlined the economic and social impacts of older adults finding new voices and income streams through digital platforms. "My grandmother," she said in her conclusion, displaying a professional-looking slide with my photo and metrics from my various platforms, "has reached over 3 million people with her message that life evolution doesn't end at some arbitrary age. She's built a 6-figure business from scratch in less than 2 years. She's affecting policy discussions about digital inclusion, and she's changing how my generation thinks about aging." She looked directly at us, her expression serious beyond her 15 years. Most importantly, she showed me that it's never too late to reinvent yourself. That courage doesn't have an expiration date. I felt Melissa's hand find mine in the darkened classroom. When I glanced over, I saw tears tracking silently down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I've been so wrong." It wasn't the end of our journey, but it was perhaps the most significant turning point. In acknowledging her granddaughter's admiration for me, Melissa finally began to see what I'd been trying to show her all along, that my reinvention wasn't a rejection of my role as mother and grandmother, but an expansion of who I could be in the world. Last week, I gave the keynote address at the Digital Influence Summit, the first person over 60 to do so in the event's history. The auditorium was packed with creators, marketers, and media executives across generations. My topic: the multi-generational future of digital spaces. "We talk about digital natives and digital immigrants," I told the audience, "as if there's a binary division between those born into technology and those who must learn it as a second language. But that framing misses something crucial: the unique perspective that comes from straddling multiple eras, from remembering a pre-digital world while embracing a digital future." I scanned the crowd, pausing when I spotted them. Melissa, James, and all 3 grandchildren, seated in the 10th row, watching with unmistakable pride. The most powerful voices in digital spaces won't be those who know only one world, but those who can translate between worlds, who bring context and history to innovation, who understand that progress isn't about erasing what came before, but building upon it. The applause when I finished was gratifying, but nothing compared to the embrace Melissa gave me afterward. Tight, genuine, and healing. "I get it now," she said quietly. "What you're building is important, not just for you, but for all of us." Later that night, as we celebrated over dinner, a family united rather than divided by my unconventional path, I checked my phone to find an email notification that made me catch my breath. "What is it, Grandma?" Zoe asked, noticing my expression. I showed her the screen. Forbes, 50 over 50. The future shapers. "You made the list?" she squealed, drawing everyone's attention. "Apparently," I said, still processing it myself. Melissa raised her glass. "To Mom, influencer, author, and future shaper." As glasses clinked around the table, I felt a profound sense of completion, not because I'd reached some pinnacle of success, but because I'd found a way to integrate all parts of myself: the teacher, the widow, the mother, the creator, the advocate, into a whole person who could continue growing and contributing for years to come. The journey from that humiliating dinner to this moment of celebration hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been setbacks, doubts, technical disasters, and painful confrontations. But through it all, I discovered something essential: that visibility isn't just about being seen, but about truly seeing yourself, your value, your potential, your right to define your own story at every stage of life. Tomorrow, I'll start a new video series. I'll continue working on my second book. I'll mentor more aspiring creators who thought their time had passed. I'll keep challenging the artificial boundaries between generations, and I'll remember what Zoe said in her presentation. Courage doesn't have an expiration date. Neither does purpose. Neither does growth. neither does joy. If my story has resonated with you, whether you're navigating your own reinvention or supporting someone who is, I hope you'll stay connected as this journey continues. Our channel is approaching that important 1,000 subscriber milestone, which will open up even more possibilities for bringing these stories to light. Your subscription isn't just a number to us, it's a statement that these narratives matter, that visibility across all life stages matters. Together, we're creating a community where no one becomes invisible, where every transition becomes an opportunity, and where every voice is valued regardless of age. Subscribe now, and let's continue this journey of dignity, discovery, and digital transformation together.